Welcome back to the Broadman Word, and we are getting closer and closer to the end of looking at the seven churches and the letters to the seven churches. Now, today we are going to be looking at the second to last one, and I will be doing a Broadman Word on Saturday to replace one Tuesday. I was hanging out with some other brothers and sisters in Christ with our state convention down in Mount Vernon, Ohio. And so because of that, I was just kind of worn out by the time I got back, even though it was absolutely great time. And so just didn't make a Broadman Word on Tuesday, so I will make one on Saturday to replace that. But today we are going to spend a little bit of time with the second church that only got a good review, only positive reviews. And we're going to see just a little bit from them what we can take away today to continue to be not just obedient, but to continue to hold on to our faith, even in the midst of really hard and trying times. So, with that being said, turn to Revelation chapter 3. We're going to be looking at verses 7 through 13. So, verse 7. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, the words of the Holy One, the true one, who has the key of David, who opens and no one will shut, who shuts and no one opens. Now, from the pattern we've seen with the other five churches, this may, and hopefully does, kind of spring off the page for you, because the other five churches were all about trying to connect to the descriptions of Jesus that John gives in Revelation chapter 1. Here, it does not do that. So it almost makes you as the reader go, whoa, something's different. Now, there is a talk of keys in chapter 1. It's not the key of David per se, but there is a talk of keys, so you could make that connection. However, I think, though, this is definitely something where these last two churches are here to make you go, ooh, something's going on here. And I think it's just this idea that you have in chapter 3, the start of chapter 3, you have one church that is only negative, a negative review. And then you have a positive review with verses 7 through 13, and then another only negative review with Laodicea, which we will look at on Saturday, in verses 14 through 22. Do I think that's a coincidence? Not at all. I think that is a masterful way to write, and also a masterful way to present what Jesus does to John, who then writes this down. And so I think what a great grammatical structure to put together to show us the differences between a negative review and a positive review of a church. Now, with that being said, what is the key of David here? I think it is definitely just symbolism when it comes to who has ultimate authority, and that's Jesus and Jesus alone. When it says who opens and no one will shut, who shuts and no one opens, well, guess what? Jesus is the one who grabs our attention, and he holds on to us. But he also gives you and I opportunities. But those opportunities are not always there forever. Sometimes, and I'm talking about evangelistic opportunities, by the way, sometimes we will give in to fear and we will miss that opportunity. Now, does that mean that because we miss an opportunity to evangelize, that Jesus forsakes us and forgets us? No. And actually, he'll give you more chances. But you have... Sadly, you have missed out on a chance to evangelize. But basically, at the end of the day, the idea with the key of David is that Jesus and Jesus alone has ultimate authority. And that is, I think, the big thing that you're supposed to see from verse 7. With that in mind, then, that's where you're supposed to go with verses 8 through 13, which is where we will go now. I know your works. Behold, I have set before you an open door, which no one is able to shut. So going back to verse 7. I know that you have but little power, and yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. Now, this is interesting, and you really have to look at the ancient city of Philadelphia in order to kind of piece together what really Jesus, right? What Jesus is getting at here. And so, with that, Philadelphia is, by the way, what we see from Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Here, it's not really that necessarily. It is very much brotherly love when it comes to faith, though, which is what we'll see as we go on. But the actual ancient city of Philadelphia, very, very interesting. So this city was really, really impacted by a huge earthquake in the Roman Empire in about 17 AD. And this city was actually renamed Neo Caesarea, which basically means Caesar's new city. That's what that means, Neo Caesarea. And so this is a very bustling city, a lot going on. But at the same time, it's true. Verse 8 is true. There's not a lot of power here within this city, and specifically within this church as well. You might have heard of the book of Ephesians. You might have heard of Thyatira. You might have heard of Laodicea as well. But Philadelphia, just not that much when it comes to the church that was a part of the ancient city of Philadelphia. However, though, it is a very, very big area when it comes to agriculture. There was a very fertile valley that was within or next to Philadelphia that was a part of Philadelphia. And so you have a lot of that. But at the same time, you still have aspects of paganism. You have Zeus, you have Hestia, you have a Roman imperial cult that was there. And so you still have aspects of that. It wasn't like it was a through and through Christian city. You also have a synagogue there, which we'll talk about that in a second, based on verse 9, which is really, really interesting. But then the last thing is that there is some connection with early church fathers like Ignatius in the early hundreds AD, and then even with Polycarp, who, to be honest, is one of my personal just ancient New Testament church, early church father heroes. He is, what an amazing story. He is a disciple of the Apostle John, actually. And he passed away or was martyred. He was martyred in about 155 AD. And Philadelphia actually had a connection with Polycarp as well. So that's really, really cool to see. But with that, I think the aspect of little power, though, is that there's not this very big political structure within the city. And then as well, this church is just not that well known, or the city well known, when it comes to a connection to an early church. However, they still do a lot of things for the Lord. Which we will continue to look at now. Verse 9, behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Jews and are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow down before your feet, and they will learn that I have loved you. So, couple things here. So, yes, there was a synagogue in Philadelphia. Does that mean that the synagogue of Satan is talking about that synagogue? It doesn't really say that exactly, but however, I do think that we are supposed to see that the Jews that are within the city of Philadelphia were very, very much persecuting the believers of Philadelphia. Not only that, but they were acting very pharisaical. They are saying that they are Jews, but then they're not following that up with actions. And so you have that just hypocrisy that Jesus really touches on with the Pharisees in the Gospels. But you also have a callback to Revelation chapter 2, verse 9, with the church of Smyrna, which, by the way, was the first first church with the positive review and positive review only. So I think it's interesting that Jesus mentions the synagogue of Satan only with those two churches. I think that is definitely not a coincidence. I think what that is getting at for you and I as believers today is that we should not be surprised when Satan comes after us, whether that is in the form of paganism or whether that's in the form of persecution, and it could be from anybody. That we should not be surprised that we are persecuted for our faith. However, what I think is really, really cool is the idea that you have the setup of you don't have very much power in verse 8, but yet at some point, this synagogue of Satan will bow down to you in verse 9. Now, again, does this mean that they actually have power? No. It's because they are following after Jesus. And because I will keep, and they will learn that I have loved you at the end of verse 9. Again, Jesus holds the ultimate authority. Verse 10. Because you have kept my word about patient endurance, I will keep you from the hour of trial that is coming on the whole world to try those who dwell on the earth. A lot of people think that this is talking about pre-tribulation rapture, which it very well could be. And it makes sense on the surface, does it not? It really says, I will keep you from the hour of trial that is coming on the whole world to try those who dwell on the earth. It makes sense why that would be pre-trib language or pre-tribulation language. And the idea of pre-tribulation, by the way, really quickly, is the idea that before the 7 years of tribulation at the end of time, Jesus will come back and will call believers to himself, and therefore only those who do not believe will be left on the earth, which you could call, which would be called the rapture. Now, that whole thing is for a different day. I think there is evidence for post-tribulation rapture as well. But that's for a different day. But I could definitely see where you could see aspects of pre-tribulation rapture here in verse 10. But I think, again, the big part about this, though, is that we are called to have patient endurance. And that is so difficult. That is so hard to do. Not just the endurance part, but the patience part. And then, let alone, put those two together. I mean, it's incredibly difficult unless you put your faith and trust in the only one who has ultimate authority, and that's Jesus and Jesus alone. Then that patient endurance is still difficult, but it's not impossible. Even though it seems like it may be in certain situations. And that's a really, really beautiful lesson to learn. Verse 11, I'm coming soon. Hold fast what you have so that no one may seize your crown. And yes, I know when Jesus says, I'm coming soon, a lot of people will think, oh, that means he's already come and gone. Look, God's aspect of time is way different than ours. And so when he says, I'm coming soon, guess what? That could be any day. And so what does that mean? Hold fast what you have so that no one may seize your crown. Now, does this mean that we can lose our salvation? It does not. It just means that, look, you are already saved because of the sacrifice of Jesus, that you put your faith and trust in Jesus as Savior and Lord. So your crown is already good. Like, that is already done. But I think what Jesus is getting at here is the fact that hold fast what you have is the idea of the witness that you have for the kingdom. So hold fast to the fact that you are a believer. Spend time in your word, spend time in prayer, spend time in fellowship. Hold fast to those things. And so nobody can go, well, I don't know. Is he a believer? Is he not? So then your witness is not put into question. It doesn't mean that your salvation will be taken away. but we definitely don't want to put a hindrance on our witness for Jesus. And I think that's what Jesus is getting at in verse 11. Now, verse 12, the one who conquers, I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. Never shall he go out of it, and I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which comes down from my God out of heaven in my own new name. Now, there's a lot going on there. So first off, I think the aspect of the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which comes, that part, I think is going back to the actual historical account of Philadelphia, that Neo-Caesarea part. I think Jesus is taking that historical aspect and then showing how he's calling them a new name because they are new. We are new because we are made new in the sacrifice, through the sacrifice of Jesus. And what a beautiful thing that is. And not only that, but he keeps going on from there. Which comes down from my God out of heaven. It's talking about the New Jerusalem, which is, referenced in Revelation chapter 21, but I think it's also referenced in chapter 22 as well. And then Jesus is given a new name, which he will show at the end of time as well. Again, mentioned in Revelation, I believe it's 19 or 20. And then we end just like we have been ending with verse 13. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So everything that we learned from the Church of Philadelphia is very much still applicable to us today. And big thing with the Church of Philadelphia is holding firm to our faith, practicing patient endurance, and then absolutely believing and trusting that Jesus is the only one who holds ultimate authority. And that is a little bit that I think that we can learn from the letter to the church in Philadelphia. So with that being said, I will see you on Saturday as we wrap up with the 7th letter to the churches. But then next week, we will look at what if there was a letter to the churches in America? What would that say? I think the answer shouldn't surprise you. And so won't give any more away, but I'm excited to get into that with you next week. But on Saturday, though, we will wrap up with the church in Laodicea. But thanks for spending a little bit of time with me today as we walk through the church in Philadelphia. Thanks.